Welcome to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you are ready to find your inner magic, develop great habits, and a rock steady mindset to feel confident, comfortable, and fit in your body, you are in the right place. I am Kim Barnes Jefferson, and I'll be giving you weekly doses of health, fitness, and life tips sprinkled with humor and real talk. If you're ready to be consistent without the stress of perfection, magic makers, it's time to slip into your favorite pair of PJs, grab some coffee, kick back, and listen to today's show. This week's iTunes review is brought to you by M.L. Martel. She writes, 5 stars. Kim is more than just knowledgeable in just health and fitness. She is supportive, reassuring, and on the level. She gives it to you straight, just the way most people need it. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate that review. And you too can review Fit Girl Magic Podcast. Just go to iTunes or wherever you subscribe to this show and just leave me a 5-star review. I love them. I take them to heart. I just want to make sure that I'm bringing you the best stuff. So thank you so much for all of you who have left me a review so far. I can't wait to highlight you. Sabrena Jo from ACE was in the house today, and we were talking about behavior change. And, pretty much why is behavior change so hard? And, we talked about how it's really our resistance to changing. It's our resistance to moving into things that are unfamiliar. And we don't, especially if we don't know if we're going to succeed, right? We want to have that certainty. And she, boiled it down to like a 3-step system that I think is 1, simple, and 2, brilliant. We talked a lot about how do we really kind of start simple so that we can have early success. And that's what I feel, and she feels as well, keeps many of us stuck, is that we try to take on the complicated. And then when we don't see success, we trip over our own feet. We don't want to do it. So listen to this conversation because it's really about, it's not about, go big or go home. It's a lot about being the tortoise, right? We all know that fable, the tortoise and the hare. The hare beat the crap out of the tortoise. And then, at the end of the race, trips, stumbles, falls, and the tortoise ends up winning. So I challenge you, be the tortoise. Be the tortoise. All right, listen to the show. And I love feedback. So be sure to give me a thumbs up, give me a shout out if this show resonates with you at all. So here is Miss Sabrena Jo. Oh, magic makers. Today I have someone who actually was a college professor. I think that's the first. I think that's an actual first that I've had a college professor. So I'm in love right now. And you're going to be in love right now. Her name is Sabrena Jo, and she comes to me from ACE. Now, for those of you guys who are in the biz, you know what I mean by ACE. For those of you who aren't in the biz, it is the American Council on Exercise. They are a nonprofit that certifies people who are looking to be group fitness instructors, personal trainers, or health coaches. So if this is something that's up your alley or you've been thinking about making a career change during Rona times, look them up because they have some amazing certifications. So I have Sabrena Jo, and she is the Director of Science and Research for ACE. She also was a college professor. And I'm sure if she was my college professor, I would have paid a little bit more attention. So let's welcome Sabrena Jo to the show.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for having me. I was chuckling during your intro because I've listened to your podcast and I just love the joy and the energy that you bring. And I'm so thrilled to be here.
It's funny. So when I was a kid, I was a motor mouth. And I remember I think it was like in 6th grade, I told Miss Maffetone, if you're still alive, 2 snaps up to your sister girl, that I wanted to be a talk show host. And at the time when I was a kid, the only people who were talk show hosts, this is before Oprah, it was Phil Donahue was like that was it. Like, and so, of course you think you want to be this gray haired guy on TV. And then I feel like all of a sudden it just like, talk show host was like, Oprah just like blew everything up and like everybody and their mother was a talk show host. So with my podcast, I'm my own talk show host. Look at that.
I think that's awesome. And I think you found your calling. I love it.
Yeah. So I brought Sabrena on here because first of all, I love that, she comes from a certifying body that actually has a certification on behavior change. So if this is like your jam, because it's kind of like my jam and I might geek out. So sorry, ladies, but keep listening because this is what I feel is what keeps you stuck, right? If you ever said, I'm so stuck, I don't know what to do with myself, you have to listen here because it's your behavior. Now I'm going to ask Sabrena this $1 million question that if she or I had the answer to it, we would be like rolling in hundreds, burning them in our fireplaces. I guess like, why do you think behavior change is so hard?
That is a question that's fairly easy to answer, but it's hard to solve. Right. There's no quick solution to it. But
right.
The reason that it's so difficult is because human beings are resistant to change, especially when it comes to doing something that's unfamiliar or that requires a lot of thought and effort in addition to all the other stuff that we've got going on throughout our days.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to hit on every single thing you just said because that is start of the $1 million question. So the first part is the thought and the effort. Right.
Yeah.
So do you think when we start to I know for me, when I first started my training, I was like, here are the 500 things you got to do if you're going to be successful. And of course that's overwhelming. But when you peel it down to say, you ask the person, okay, I'm going to give you 3 things. What do you feel comfortable changing? Do you think that kind of opens the door a little bit to behavior change?
That is one of the first things that I do with my clients for sure is we narrow down the focus of what we want to work on together because you don't want to put yourself or in my instance, my clients in positions where they're the old saying paralysis by analysis.
Oh, yes.
There's so much we could work on, right? But when you narrow down 1 or 2 things to start with, then the other things tend to come along much easier. So one of the things that we do is a focusing exercise where we really need to understand all the things that are going on in your life right now and really what are the 1 or 2 things that we could tackle that would make the most difference and actually affect some of the other stuff without even really having to think much about it. So it's a little bit of a really getting to know yourself moment where you're like, okay, what's the most important thing that I can focus on now? And how are we going to go about doing it?
Yeah, agreed. And, to further bring out that point, I feel like, so say, you and I were coaching and they said to you, you know what, my sleep is crap. And then I feel like if you said, great, Kim, let's start on sleep. I always feel that someone always has that second thought in the back of their head that says, well, me sleeping isn't good enough. Like I should be doing more. This feels too easy that I'm just focusing on my sleep.
Yes. And so that's often a pushback. And what I find that is really just a barrier that I can help people overcome by helping them understand how sleep is related to health, weight loss, and fitness, if that happens to be their goal. And oftentimes just talking with clients and helping them to understand that when you're looking at overall health and the bigger picture, that anything you can do, any small change that you can do that will affect their overall health, so maybe that's sleep, it actually will result in greater changes across the board. But I do find that, to your point, in the beginning, when people don't have that understanding up front, then working on just sleep doesn't feel like enough.
Yeah. And I think it's like, the no pain, no gain, like I want that motto to go away. Like,
Yes,
I want
please.
whoever came up with that, I want to find him and tie him to a chair and be like, come up with something else. Slow and steady wins the race. Like,
really, why couldn't that have caught on?
I know. And it's so funny because I guess, I always say this, and you probably see it so much because you're so deep in this work, is that, I love Amazon. Jeff Bezos, you're my spirit animal. But I feel like because we get things in 2 days, we think our bodies and our fitness should all happen in that same time period. I woke up on Monday and said, I'm losing 30 pounds. And if it doesn't happen by Friday, I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah. And that is a frustration from many clients. And it tends to happen when the focus is on physiological or performance outcomes that are really hard to control.
Right.
It's so difficult to control your own physiology, your own metabolism. And when you make, for example, pounds on the scale, the focus of your success or failure, it's really difficult to feel good about yourself when after 7 days, nothing budges, or it goes the opposite direction. That can be so demotivating.
Absolutely. And I wanted to key in on this. Feel good about yourself. And so, I know my clients absolutely hate when I say, great, you want to lose weight, but I want you to give me a goal that has absolutely nothing to do with that scale. And I feel like that paralyzes a lot of people because in our culture, I turn on the TV right now or I scroll through, any social media. There's, lose 50 pounds in 5 minutes and lose this, lose that, lose this, lose that. And it's hard to get them to shift from, like what we talked about earlier, about like, hey, well, how did it feel to get 7 freaking hours of sleep? Like, did that feel good? Did it feel good to get in, 8 glasses of water? Like, how do you physically feel versus that scale, that number on the scale doesn't change you physiologically. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's really something that, especially for people who are, let's say near my age, I'm in my late 40s. And so we all kind of grew up with this concept, like you said, no pain, no gain, and constantly focusing on the scale and not really understanding that exercise or physical activity isn't a punishment for eating a cupcake.
Right.
It's exercise and physical activity is for health and well-being and really the joy of movement. And I find it really difficult to re-educate people on that concept, because I know for so many of us, myself included, when I first started in this business, I used exercise as a means to an end.
Oh, God, yeah.
I ignored everything wonderful about it, and it was just punishing.
Yes. Like if I wasn't dripping with sweat and I couldn't wash my hair the next day, was it a workout?
Right. If I wasn't in pain, I could barely move the next day. Did it even count?
Right. And now, I too am in my 40s. Now I'm like, dude, I just don't have time for that. I don't want my knees to bother me anymore. I don't want my shoulders to bother me. And it's been a really long time since I can say that I've had like an injury because I haven't been in that like push to the, brink.
Yeah. And that was a large part of my 20s. So I don't know if it's helping me now that I'm older to really understand healthy movement so that my joints aren't affected. That's probably part of the motivation for me to help my clients understand the same thing. But again, I think that speaks to everyone's motivation. There's nothing wrong with wanting to really push yourself to physically perform. I think that's a goal for many people, and that's fine. I just think it speaks to the individual nature of what motivates us.
Yeah. And I think, I'm all for a good hard workout, but I also think one of the things that, as we were kind of like growing up in the fitness world, that we never really focus much on the recovery as
Yeah.
much as we focus on it now. And, I think that's also a behavior change that, going hard 7 days a week just isn't sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It increases your risk for injury, and it probably actually dampens your performance. So, and it makes you feel like crap.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And, I have a couple of clients who, when I told them, they were like, "Oh, I'm always so hungry," and I was like, "All right, write down what you eat and break out your workouts for me." And then she didn't put any of this, but she was doing a boot camp in the morning and then going back in the afternoon, and I
Oh,
was like, she didn't write it on the piece of paper. And it was just kind of in a matter of factly conversation. She's like, "Well, the girls that I meet for the morning boot camp." I'm like, "Wait, what? You didn't put that on the piece of paper. You just said you work out at night." And she's like, "Well, I did the 60-minute boot camp." And I'm like, "That's why you're so goddamn hungry."
that's amazing. That, like, for someone's drive to want to do that amazes me. Like, I don't want to do that, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, I want to say in the last 5 years, I'm like, you know what? If it lasts more than 30 minutes for a workout, it has to be something awesome. Like I tap out at like 30 minutes. I'm like, all right, it's been enough. Where's the cool
Yeah.
down?
Give me something to look forward to, which is the cool
Right.
down. Yeah.
So the other thing we talked about at the beginning was the unfamiliar. And I think this part of the conversation has blossomed into, I think, the new way that, research is showing us about working out and research is showing us about food is very unfamiliar. If all my life I've been taught that I should do an hour of cardio followed by weights or a boot camp class, that is a difficult for my mind to like wrap around.
Yeah. Yep. And one of the ways that if you're struggling with this, or that me, when I'm helping my clients, I try to help them understand their emotional regulation around some of these habits or behaviors that they've just taken on throughout their lives. And now it's not really serving them very well. So one of the things we might do is, well, first realize I can't change someone and I can't change their mind. They have to come to it on their own. So if I can help them understand their perhaps some negative feelings or consequences around what they're doing. So in this example, we're kind of talking about maybe working out too hard or too often to the point where it's actually not even benefiting them.
Right.
If I can help them keep some type of journal and journal loosely, if I can just get them to track how they feel around their workouts, leading up to it, during and after, and just kind of all the emotions that go along with that. And if there's an overwhelming incidence of negativity around it, like, ugh, I've got to get on my workout clothes, I've got to drag myself out to, well, no longer the gym, but maybe the garage,
Right.
and do this punishing workout just so I can, I don't know, eat pasta later. That, what kind of existence is that? And how do they feel about it? And once they go through the effort of really understanding their emotions around it, then really, with their permission, of course, giving them some information about how it could be better or different. And they have to come to it on their own. So you have to be curious enough to want to change. And a lot of times that's a timing thing for people. People eventually do come around to it.
Yeah, because it's like I think, I always kind of go back to my own, awakening, if you will. And it was like, for me, had my body not like given me the finger, maybe it would have taken me a little longer to come to this realization. But I also feel like you hit the nail on the head, the worthiness, right? I feel worthy if I'm killing myself at the gym, and maybe I put a lot of my worth in how hard I can work out.
Yeah, so you're identifying with your ability to really just be an animal in the gym.
Right. Or maybe, I've always been, in my group at my job, the person who works out. So if I were to scale back, do I lose some of that identity?
Yeah. Yeah. That's tough. What's interesting about that concept is that changes each decade, right? Like
Yeah.
you might be into something, like you might be into bodybuilding, like I was in my 20s, but then over time I kind of lost interest and wanted to do something else. So I think your focus changes too.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like everyone kind of goes through that bodybuilding phase. And, I actually did fitness competitions for 10 years. So that was like my whole drive, was getting to the gym and just doing. And I know I went through an identity crisis when I stopped competing, because I was like, well, what do you do at the gym now? I don't have to be at the gym for this many amount of time. Like, I didn't know how to handle myself. So that was a little bit of a change for me. But I feel that it's, as you said, kind of working with the client to really identify the why are they doing this.
So true. And I work with people who are middle-aged, and perhaps in their high school and college years, they were athletes. It's the same kind of thing, same mindset. You have a reason to work out twice a day and push yourself to the brink back in those days. But once your identity changes and now you're a full-time worker, you've got a family, you've got other responsibilities, what are the reasons? It's certainly not the same as they were when you were in college. So it's really identifying how movement, if that's what we're focusing on, is important to you, and how you might enjoy it. It's not punishment, actually.
Right.
And how that fits into your lifestyle. And that's the most important thing that I think I connect with my clients, is that I have a 3-lever system when I work with clients, and it's nothing new. It's not going to be astounding, but here they are. Lever 1 is nutrition.
Yep.
Lever 2 is physical activity.
Yep.
And lever 3 is individual/lifestyle.
Yeah.
And lever number 3 is what trips people up the most.
Yes. And so we're going to break all 3 of those down, because those are awesome. Cause you see all over the interwebs, there's a pyramid, and it always starts down at the bottom with like nutrition. And for many people, if I ask the question, what's easier for you to stick with, nutrition or workouts? Everyone's like, workouts. I can work out.
Yeah.
But it's the nutrition. And I feel like part of it is, the industry wrecks your head, because, this week, everyone's drinking celery juice. Next week, it's, collagen. Then the following week, it's this. And it's so like, people are going for, they want the quick fix, right? They want that, like, oh, if I just had the celery juice, I don't have to do anything else.
Yeah, and it's a reflection of our need it now lifestyle and mentality, and also just we're busy right. people, and overhauling your entire nutrition plan is huge.
Yes.
So if you can do something that isn't, it doesn't require a lot of thought, then you're going to do it. And if it's one simple thing of drinking celery juice, then that sounds attractive in some respects.
Right.
I get it. I understand. But the reason that for me nutrition is the number 1 lever is because it's pervasive throughout our day. We're frequently eating. We have to.
Absolutely.
And it's one of those behaviors that if you can tweak just slightly, because we do it so often, that slight tweak might make a huge difference.
Yeah. And it's going back to what you said, it's that the effort, right? So if I make the effort small, because so many people, and I will say this comes from the bodybuilding world, everyone's like, if I just had a meal plan, If I just
Yeah.
had a meal plan, whoa, yeah, you'd have that meal plan, so you cheated on it, right? Like,
Yes, the days of meal plans. Wow. But I understand the desire. Just tell me what to eat. Please, just tell me what to eat. I
yes,
don't want to think about it. And once you provide an example for people to follow, they might follow it for a little bit. I'm maybe 3 days,
right.
and then they're off to something else, or life got in the way, and it just became impossible to follow. And of course, it was something that it was a suggestion, right? It wasn't
Right.
something I was hoping that they would, chain themselves to the rest of their lives. But I understand the reason for simplicity.
Yeah, and it's funny, like that's my whole world right now. I'm like, I work with my clients. I'm like, I want it to be simple. So I don't give you a meal plan because I want to see how you eat. Because,
Yeah.
80%, and probably you're fall in the same bucket, 80% of my clients, I look at their food, it's really good. It's a couple of tweaks here. It might be, upping their protein a little bit, moving around a few things. But for the most part, no one's rolling up to work with me and all they see is like, McDonald's and processed foods. Like I don't see that.
Yeah, that's true. And oftentimes by the time the person is ready to actually connect with me as a health coach or exercise professional, they've committed a little bit at least to cleaning up their diet and making some good changes. And so they're ready, like they're ready to listen and to
Right.
receive that help. And so that might be a different stage of readiness versus someone who is just simply thinking about it and has taken no action yet on making some healthy changes. And so we've got this continuum of people who are really, really super ready to change, 100% devoted to commitment, versus someone who's perhaps thought about it a couple times the last couple of weeks and are just starting to look into some healthy changes. And so I work with all kinds of people on that continuum, but it really does speak to, first of all, what knowledge do you have and how ready are you to change? So there's some pretty important factors.
And it's true because it's like I call it the hokey pokey. Uh, when you're, it's like you got one foot in, you got one foot out, you got one foot in, you got one foot out. And I always say to like my hokey pokey clients, I was like, hey, I'm like, you're thinking in your head that, it's 500 things that you have to change. Where it's like, just like you have your 3 steps. And I'm like, I call them my 6 big rocks. So I'm like, here, I'm going to give you 6 big rocks. Pick one. And we're going to work on that until you are a rock star because everyone wants to be a winner, right? No one wants to like lose at the game of life. Like you want to feel good.
Exactly. So setting yourself up for success very early and very often is one of the things that keeps you coming back, because you're not feeling punished or
Right.
defeated by the experience.
Right. And, one of the things you brought up that I had on one of my topics to chat about, self-directed versus um, chosen versus directed. When we talk about nutrition, I do have people who come to me that, my doctor says if I don't lose X number of pounds, my blood pressure medication is going to be increased or whatever. Versus people who are like, hey, I want to go to my daughter's wedding and I want to lose the 10 pounds.
Yes, exactly. And when I work with clients, I really try to understand, um, this is a common thing recently, understanding the why. Like,
Mm,
why is this important to you? But not even the why so much. I mean, once we narrow that down, it's really trying to understand that lever 3, individual/lifestyle factors, that's actually going to work in that person's lifestyle. Because it doesn't matter how much knowledge I have as the professional.
mm-hmm.
What matters is the person's expertise on him or herself, and
Yes.
really, really shining a light on that and propping that up, saying, look, you've been successful in these areas in your life. You've already told me you're you're a career person, you're a great mom or father, whatever. And now let's take some of those things that we already know that you're good at, and let's apply them to this next thing you want to change about health. And it really makes them understand that they already have the skills and abilities within themselves. Let's explore and let's do some experiments to figure out where you can apply those things into this health or behavior change.
Yeah, I like that approach, because I feel like so many people think that health and fitness is siloed, that you either are healthy or you aren't, where it's, looking at, like you said, other factors in your life. And, maybe you are a successful manager. So it's like, okay, how do you take those management skills and apply and manage you?
So true. So true. Like you're a person who lives your life by lists. You like to make lists. Well, perhaps that could be a great thing when you're trying to plan out your nutrition and going to the grocery store, making some lists organized by area of the grocery store. Really start to use some of those things that you're comfortable doing, that you actually look forward to because it makes you feel like, yeah, I'm really organized and I've got a handle on this. See if you can incorporate those types of things into your life when it comes to health and behavior.
Yeah, and it's funny because I always tell my clients, they're like, well, you're just organized, and I was like, no, I'm a disorganized, organized person. I just choose to organize things that are going to help me. Everything else could be a hot mess. When I go on vacation, it literally, like, my husband and I look at each other, we're like, yeah, we said we're going to go on vacation next week. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? Like, we don't prioritize that. But when it comes to my nutrition, I will tell you, like, I got a shopping list. I know what I'm going to make for the week. Like, that's all, like, those all are lined up. So it's like, it's not asking you to be anal retentive. It's asking you to have focus in the area that you want to see change.
Yep. And it's also, in addition to that, focusing on strengths. What if I have a client who really hates lists for whatever reason, I'm not going to ask them to make a list every week. But we don't know that until we explore a little bit to focus on, their strengths. So that's kind of the paradox of change that people, when they first start working with me, they don't really understand that we have a goal. And let's say the goal is to change, change nutrition, change weight, change physical activity, doesn't matter. But the paradox is that you have this specific goal, but the process to get there could be so many different ways.
Yes.
And so it's the so many different ways that I want to focus on to make sure that it fits with the client.
Yeah. And I love how you talked about it's the process. And I think many people lose sight of the process because when we just focus on progress and we don't have a process, how do we know where something is breaking down? I think about, you ran gyms before. So, every gym had like their standard operating procedures. And it was like, this is how you open, this is how you close, this is, how you clean. And everything had like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And I think many of us miss that kind of like operating manual for ourselves.
Oh, yes. Wouldn't it be great if we went with an operating manual?
In my head, I'm always like, I always say that to my clients. I go, do you have a job where there's like, like a manual, like even like an employee handbook? And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, we're trying to make an employee handbook for you. Like you're, and I was like, and it's not about all the goddamn rules. You make, it's not like I don't eat after 6 and I can only do 400 calories on the treadmill. Like, no, it's like we're writing the new rule book so that when you get stuck or you feel lost or you get off track, you can open the rule book and be like, okay, where in the manual am I? Like, where do I start?
I love it. I also like to give people options. So in the rule book, if you have 2 or 3 different options, for when you're troubleshooting a problem, I think it also is a little more helpful than you mentioned something called like self-directed versus other-directed.
Yeah.
And so if you have some options that that you've already agreed upon that work for you, then let's say you really messed up and you meant to bring your lunch because it was healthy, but then you left it on the counter at home and now you're out in the world and you're like, oh no, I'm really hungry. I need to eat something. What are my options?
Yes.
Well, you've already got it in the playbook. And by the way, there are things that you enjoy. It's not like you're being punished and eating a piece of lettuce.
Right.
You have
You're like,
options.
all I could do is go to the store and get a piece of lettuce
right.
and sit in the corner and beat myself.
Exactly.
No, I love that. You're absolutely right, because there have been plenty of times that I have left my lunch on the counter.
Yes.
And of course you get to that point of like no return, that you're just like, it's by the time I turned around and got it, you're like, ah! So after you spend like, a few minutes beating yourself up, then you kind of go into that like, okay, plan B. Like, what's my plan B? And I always say to people, like, before I came to fitness, I was a meeting planner. And if you didn't have a plan B as a meeting planner, you were screwed, because inevitably the box didn't show up, or the hotel told you they had this, but oh, well, they don't. So you always had to, like, in your head, literally have like a plan B and C already like mapped out, so that if you were disappointed, you weren't on the ground like flailing. You were like, okay, this is what we're going to do instead. So I always say that to my clients. I'm like, you have to have a plan B, because, life, it's like, one of my clients, she was a new mommy. And do you have children?
Yes.
So
yes.
as a new mommy, you don't know. They don't send you home with a rule book. And so you're like, oh yeah, the kid goes down for a nap. The kid does this, the kid does that. And then you don't realize the kid works on their own time schedule.
Yeah, they're not taking you into consideration whatsoever.
We used to work out, 2 days a week, 6 a.m. And so, she came back from maternity leave. She was like determined to get back to that. And I'm like, you've been home for 3 months. Like, has your kid gotten into that rhythm, like that, for a fact on Monday at 6 a.m., you're going to get a good night's sleep on Sunday, and she's, your daughter's going to go down. No, inevitably she was just like, and she was always frustrated and pissed off. And I was like, dude, it's life. Like that, like, you're living in life. So instead of saying, let's have an appointment, tell yourself like you're going to only work out 3 days that week, and be fluid, versus it has to be on Monday.
Yeah. Be willing to adapt and adjust. That's one of the things that when someone works with me for the first time, I think it's probably a little bit surprising to hear me say that everything we're about ready to do is an experiment.
Yes.
And I want to encourage people to approach behavior change like a scientist.
Yeah.
And so all good scientists conduct experiments. They take what they learn from that experiment and they adjust and adapt accordingly. And I just want to give my clients, give all people permission to try something for a week or so. And if it's really not working, okay, let's figure out what will work. And that's completely legal in the behavior change game.
And that, it's funny that you said scientist, because I always use CSI. Everyone's seen the TV show. And I was like, I go, we all make mistakes. Like, everyone does. Like, if you didn't make a mistake, then I just need to check your blood, like, to make sure you are human. And it's like, you made the mistake, so let's treat it like CSI. There's a dead body on the floor. What happened? That way you can be like, oh, Colonel Mustard came and hit you on the head with a knife. Okay. So was there something I could have done to keep Colonel Mustard from coming into the room? And it's not in a beat the shit out of yourself kind of way. It's more like, oh, like, kind of like you said, like, well, I left my lunch on the counter. So if I do leave my lunch at the counter, you know what? There's a grocery store. I can always go, well, not in Rona times, but I could always go to the salad bar. So it's like, you always have that like plan B of like, okay, well, there is a sub shop, so I can go to the sub shop and ask for, a turkey wrap or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I go, that way you're not like feeling like crap. And so you're like, oh, I'm just going to go and just get like, where are you located?
I'm in Kansas, in the Midwest.
In the Midwest. Okay. So we have this in New England. I'm in Boston. In New England, we have this sub shop called D'Angelo's. And everyone has a sub shop who makes this. But here in New England, it's called the Number 9 Steak Bomb. And
Oh, that sounds great.
It's literally a heart attack in a wrap. So if I did leave my lunch, I don't have to automatically jump to the Number 9 Steak Bomb. Like I can find other alternatives other than that.
Yeah. And let's say for whatever reason, you're in a place you're traveling and it's not known to you, it's unfamiliar. You can still have some options in terms of even at fast food places.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just got to do it. And so if you have some options, then you're not going in with anxiety and like throwing your hands up like, well, there goes everything.
Right. And I always say I like options because I feel like when you don't give yourself options, and so say like you wanted salmon. Say like, oh, today on the meal plan was salmon. And you go to a restaurant and they don't have salmon. And you're like paralyzed. I'm like,
yeah.
What? There's no salmon. So I always try to, that's when my clients ask me why I don't do meal plans. I was like, because I want you to be able to like do life and like go to a restaurant, go out on a date night, go out on a date and not be that girl who's like, I got to look at the menu 50 times to make sure I can go here.
Right. Yeah. And that's just not a fun way to live.
No. I mean, I did it for a long time. And so for all of the people I've ever tortured with my food, here is my open apology.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
But we can forgive ourselves and then help other people not have to fall into that trap.
Right. And I totally don't want anyone to fall into that trap. And so the last thing I want to touch on is in your 3 steps, you also talked about physical activity. And I loved how you called it physical activity.
Yes.
And, I will be the first person to say, I thought walking was just something that you did with your dog. And
as if it didn't count.
So in my bodybuilding world, I used to walk to the bus to work, and the walk to the bus stop was a quarter mile. And so at the time, my trainer would be like, oh, I walk a quarter mile every day to the bus stop, and then another quarter mile from my house to the bus stop, and then another quarter mile from my bus stop to work. So I'm like, I'm getting in easily like a mile, like 2 miles every day. And he's like, active daily living. I like completely dismissed it. Now, right. So this was also 15 years ago. So now, if someone told me that they're getting in those steps, I was like, oh, so you're easily knocking in, banging out 10,000 steps. All right, let's see if we can do 15,000. So it's like now the steps mean something. Back then it was like, that's nice.
Yeah, they were just dismissed.
Right, completely dismissed.
Yeah. So I think there are a couple of things there. First, if you're a high level athlete, and I think bodybuilders are pretty high level. I mean, your life is pretty much dictated by your training routine and your nutrition.
Yeah.
And there's not much room for other things. Even if you do hold down a job and do other things, it's all the focus is on being on stage in your underwear in the next 16 weeks.
Yes.
And so that's pretty high level. So everything that you can do to burn the calories, build the mass, that's what your focus is on. That is so different than just living a happy, normal life where physical activity in terms of walking, playing with your kids, doing yard work, all that stuff counts because it makes you a healthier, well-rounded human being. And so physical activity throughout the day, moving more is awesome. And structured exercise is also awesome. But it's an option, it's your choice, and it really should be something that works well with your lifestyle.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, we can always circle back to this, like the no pain, no gain. We've been indoctrinated that in order for me to hit my fitness goals, I pretty much have to crawl through glass and feel like shit in order for me to say, hey, I lost 25 pounds. And when someone says, how'd you do it? Well, sit down. Let me describe it. I had no fun. I had no life. I had no this. I had no that. I pretty much had ice cubes and gum. It was awesome.
Yeah. And no one really wants to live that way. Even bodybuilders, the best thing is, after you get off stage and that you go have your first meal, your real meal.
Exactly.
So it's not the healthiest cycle. So what I like to help my clients with is the fact that, first of all, what are you willing to tolerate? I mean, I know you have goals, and let's talk about what it might take to get there. And then let's talk about what you're willing to tolerate, because a lot of people, like when you have that conversation, well, okay, I was eating broccoli and chicken breast and dry tuna and basically nothing else. No one wants to live like that usually, and they pretty much quickly dismiss it and say, okay, well, that doesn't really seem like a lifestyle that I could or want to live. Okay, so let's say you do have some goals. Let's say it's a weight loss goal. Okay, well, here are the levers that we can pull. How hard do you want to pull them? And let's figure out something that will work for your lifestyle. And by the way, individual factors like preferences, your limitations, your genetics, your training history, your sleep, your recovery, your age. I mean, all that falls into that third lever. Right. You have to take that into account.
Yeah. And I think, because most of my clients are in their 40s, I always have to say, you know what? Yeah, great. Diet and exercise 100%. But I have to look at your history. I have to say, have you had kids? I have to look at, have you had any type of like metabolic disorder? Because that's going to like throw a monkey into the works.
Right.
And, are you, especially now, maybe not as much as if we were talking, July of 2019, but a lot of my ladies were stressed to the max. And so it's like, teaching them like how not to be stress balls.
Yeah. So probably stressed to the max with no time in their day to do anything.
Right.
Right now, we've got an interesting situation where a lot of us are working from home or staying at home, and the stress is from a different source. But physical activity, moving throughout the day, and just pursuing a couple of healthy behaviors can really help with that stress and emotional well-being as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially now with we all have we're all taking this like coronavirus in very different phases.
Yeah.
From I'm not leaving my house unless I'm in a hazmat suit to like mask. Who needs a bloody mask? So it is, so it's a matter of, like you said, it's the small things, right? Like the one thing that I love about Sabrena Jo, and we literally only talked for 5 minutes before this, and it was just like, she just like tapped into my brain before she came on. Everything she said is about small. It's like, it's what's possible for you. And if you're someone who's got a lot of life going on right now, pick something small. Is it your sleep? Water? Getting in 10,000 steps, playing with your kids, taking a shower, whatever it is, pick something that's for you, right? And know that I always say it's like adding up. Sabrena lives in a place that snows. I live in a place that snows. A blizzard doesn't happen in 5 minutes. It is a day-long activity. It's inch by inch. Even though I look outside and it looks like it's, snowing like 20 inches a minute, it's not. It's time, right? And I know that I have no patience. I get it. But it's believing in yourself, believing that you've put together this, or you're working on putting together this manual for yourself that creates a process that's repeatable. Because we all want a repeatable process. It's like the TV. Think about your TV. Like, you press the button, you turn it on. And if you're not able to press the button and turn it on, there's a couple of other things you do. Maybe you pull the plug out, maybe you do something else. Like, that's what we're asking for you, to like be able to have those like plan B and plan C's when life throws you that inevitable curveball.
So true. So true. And having simple early success builds so that you want to stick with it. And so biting off more than you can chew when you're getting ready to, pun intended, when you're getting ready to start, let's say, a new nutrition plan, and it eventually sets you up for failure, it just feels bad, right? Nobody wants to feel bad. So figuring out ways that are simple enough, small enough to enact immediately to make a successful change, that will eventually build upon itself so that you can have bigger and better changes. And it's all momentum. It all snowballs. And eventually you're able to do things without really feeling like it's overly effortful. And that's where you want to be, because you don't want to be tied up with worried about the next thing you have to do or the next change you have to make. You just want to live your life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's like, life's complicated enough, right? And why do we have to throw nutrition as an extra complicated layer? And I get it. There's a lot of crap out there that you read that you feel like, if I don't do this, and this, I'm never going to be healthy. Well, we're both here to tell you. She'll probably not say it as bluntly as I will. It's all bullshit, right? Pick your battles. Pick what's possible for you right now in this moment. And trust me, it'll go further than you can only imagine.
So true. And that's different for everybody. So comparing yourself to others isn't helping either.
Right. And I get it. You go to a party and like, Sabrina's like, oh, I'm doing the no gluten, no this. And you think to yourself, well, I'm not doing that. Should I? And like, you start to like second guess what you're currently doing. Stop it. If you are second guessing yourself, please go see a professional. That's what we're here for. Susie at the gym, she doesn't know. Find a professional, unless Susie is a professional. But if Susie's on the Stairmaster next to you and she's telling you what she's been doing, no.
And such a good point. And does Susie, let's say Susie is a professional, is she actually listening to what you're saying when you're telling her about your lifestyle and your needs and what will and won't work for you? Because again, you're the expert on yourself and your own life. And that's what I do. I help to train exercise professionals and health coaches. So if you're looking for one, a certified health coach and exercise professional is definitely the way to go. Of course, that's going to be my perspective.
That's my perspective as well.
Yeah. And of course, at acefitness.org, we have all kinds of resources, both for people who are just looking for some great information or people who are looking for, maybe becoming certified. So we've got both types of information there.
Yeah. And if you're looking for certification in either, personal training, group fitness, or health coaching, it is one of the top certifications that you can have. It is a certification that many, if not all, accredited, worthy working at gyms will take.
Yeah, thank you.
And, a lot of it can be done remotely. So even before Corona, a lot of it can be done remotely, and the testing can be done remotely as well. So if you're thinking of like, maybe I should get into the fitness field, check ACE out for sure. They have a lot of great resources. So before I wrap this up, Sabrina, two things. One, where can people find you on the socials?
Oh, okay. At Sabrena Jo on Twitter and Instagram, and also even Facebook. So
all at Sabrena Jo?
Yep, at Sabrena Jo. That's it.
Okay, perfect. And then one last question. What's one thing that makes you feel magical?
Oh, it makes me feel magical. It's that moment when I can help a client or a person really just realize that they have the strength within themselves to make change. Because I don't think a lot of people understand that they have the power.
Oh, that's good. That's deep. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. This was awesome. I love when guests come in and like we literally share like the same brain. So thanks so much. And it has been wonderful having you.
This has been awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity. And it's great to meet you, Kim. Thanks for having
Yes,
me.
you're welcome. Thank you for listening to the Fit Girl Magic podcast. If you've made it this far, yay. I'm thinking you enjoyed the show. Let's continue the conversation on Instagram. You can find me at Kim Jefferson Coach. In order for me to keep sharing this message, do me a favor and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss an episode. New episodes are available every Wednesday. The Fit Girl Magic podcast is intended to provide you with tips, tools, and strategies that will help you make better decisions about your health. I really appreciate your feedback and your support. Thank you so much.